Okay. Hello, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ. I hope you'll spare some time and perhaps some patience listening to the tales of an old man. Now, I can call myself that because I am old. In fact, at the initiation of this writing adventure, I was 94 and a half, and being prompted and helped by my eldest daughter to put it down on paper, all the memories and experiences of my youth, and the wonderful time spent on the Lone Oak Ranch. It was really a very interesting time in my life. With the biggest part that was so funny about the program, at that time, I call it a program because it's a history lesson of life of a youngster about 12, 13 years old. And my mother-in-law used to say, "Oh, you raised everything on the ranch. What kind of ranch did you have?" She wouldn't believe me. So my wife took her around the ranch, and she couldn't figure out. We'd go 1 mile this way, 1 mile that way, 1 mile back, 1 mile around. So it is pretty big. I said, "Yeah, it is. You start walking it, it's a long ways to walk." And of course we had horses and we had cows, we had everything that you could use being a farmer. But we also had apricots, and this story is based mostly on how we had the fun just taking care of apricots and cutting the fruit, putting them in bleachers and sulfuring them, and then spread them out to dry in the sun. Today they use dehydrators, but in those days we put it out in the sun. And people say, "Well, how come flies didn't get to?" Well, the sulfur wouldn't allow them, because the sulfur, most insects dislike sulfur very much. But it didn't bother my little sister. My little sister used to eat the juice off the apricots, and we found out later, about 80 years later, that that was wrong. Sometimes it takes a long time to learn things. In time of Christ, 100 years is just a breath of time. But in our time, it's a whole lifetime if you're lucky. Some people only live 20 or 30 years. So it's quite an interesting thing, and that's what I'm trying to put down in this little letter that I'm writing to my sister. She's the only one that's living now in my family. No one else knows this story except her. My cousin Conrad, as part of the letter that I wrote it back in 2009 and 2010. And so now she gets a kick out. She liked it so much that she took the letter that I made and she sent it to her granddaughters and her nieces and great-granddaughters so they could see the story of living on the ranch. We had a good time. Not like it is today where you worry about getting killed or someone not liking what you say. We just had a good time. Simple things, just going down the bumpy old road on an old wagon, a wagon that could turn on a dime, and they'd sit in the back, I'd be out in front with my cousin Dave, and he would be taking care of the team of horses and taking the wagon out to pick apricots. He'd give us a ride to the shed where we had about 12 to 15 cutters that cut the apricots, and I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be the one that was the shed tender. And I used to give the ladies a box of apricots, and the box of apricots, when they finished cutting it, cut it in half, throw the seeds separately from the apricot, cut them in half. They would get 10 cents for that box. Some cutters could cut 2 or 3 boxes an hour, so they're making 20 or 30 cents an hour. Well, that's not very much today, but it was a lot in those days because a hamburger only cost 5 cents. And our pickers, we had a crew of pickers that picked apricots, they got 25 cents an hour. So the ladies would make more than the men. And that was a sort of joyful time. But so many people used to give me a hard time because I was 13 years old, and being that old, you kind of, you're teased with ladies, especially when they're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, plus your mother, or other ladies same age as your mother, usually around 30, 35. So they'd tease you, and they'd say, "Hey, Al, you gave me this box too full. She got her box and had less apricots. It's not fair. I said, I have no way to know how many apricots are in there. You know, apricots are not very big, and a whole box, 50-pound box, you probably have about 300 apricots or more. So I don't know, I've never counted them. But anyway, that's the kind of teasing you get, and that's the roughest we get with our life. So we'd laugh about it. Or they would say, hey, you waited on her before me. How come? So you have little arguments, but they were tender, nice, loving arguments, which it made us feel good inside. It made me feel good because I was the boss's son. And being the boss's son, I had the privilege of punching a little ticket with my puncher, and I punch a hole for every box they cut. When they filled it up, they'd have 50 boxes and they'd have $5. And that's quite a bit. Some weeks, some ladies would have 2 of those, it'd be $10. $10 a week was a lot of money. And especially when hamburgers 5 cents and milkshakes 10 cents. You get to thinking about, well, in 1 hour you cut enough to have a meal. So that's the life that we had that made it interesting. Of course, in this letter I put out a lot of things. I'll give you an example of the letter that I wrote, which was very touching to my sister, and it was subject, cover letter, describing the pages of this entire letter. I said, hi my darling sis, Al here. If you're not already sitting down, please take the time now to just do that. Now take a donut or a Danish Svenhard, a sweet roll, and a cup of coffee. Then sit back and read my pages of mail. Do hope they will give you the entire perspective of my message. The letter on page A was written for Conrad Campos back in 2009. Conrad and I used to ride our horses named Bill and Dolly in some evenings to flirt with the girls from Los Angeles who were camping near the apricot trees and the orchard there, and they had their tents there, and they'd stay there overnight. And of course, they'd usually stay there a couple of 3 weeks until we got through with the crop. I have taken the liberty to mark each page with a letter describing that portion of the entire letter. Page B gives a further description of our wagon rides, how we got to work, and who was driving, and what we did. Guess you remember David Gary and Philema Rivas. They were married and living in one of our back houses. We had 5 houses on the ranch. A small 2-bedroom house, 3-bedroom, different types, and they had the small 2-bedroom. This describes a little of the northwest 80 acres, mostly pasture land, fishing holes, and sheep area. That was page C. Now page D is self-describable. There we had a lake, and we had fish. In fact, we had quite a few fish. The lake was about 300 feet long and about 60 feet wide. And it was about 8 to 10 feet deep. If it was full, it was about 15 feet deep. And we had a tree right next to it, and I built a raft. And on this raft, I'd go out and I'd catch fish, and I'd have a good time. And this is just made out of little logs, little trees, and so forth. That's how I did it. But from there, that was page D, which gives you a little example of what the land was like. Because it had holes for badgers, it had gopher holes, it had squirrel holes, just a lot of things. That's just simple things that farm kids would have fun with. Then we call that the sheep area. Well, babe, this is hoping my words of cartoons may bolster your attitude about life in spite of your medical report. Please feel assured our prayers are with and for you on a daily basis. Please thank Rosalie Ellen or whoever reads this letter to you. Further note, thank you, Rosalie Ellen, for keeping us posted by Facebook. We love you, babe, and all your family. This message is sincere from the heart. and absolutely true. Until our next letter visit, we say goodbye. God bless be with you and your family, Al, your brother. And I have a little cartoon on the bottom with me with my straw hat saying goodbye. See you later. Bye-bye.